In early 1943, North Africa was already scarred by months of fighting. Armies moved across sand and stone, watched by the sun and the wind. Far from the front lines, a decision was made behind closed doors. Its consequences would never be announced, but the battlefield would feel like T.By 1943, North Africa had become one of the most contested regions of the Second World War. The desert was no longer an empty space on the map. It was a corridor. A place where supply lines stretched thin and every movement could decide weeks of fighting. Allied forces, primarily British and American units, were advancing eastward after earlier setbacks. German and Italian forces, hardened by experience, prepared to resist every mile. The environment shaped everything. Sand damaged engines. Heat exhausted men. Water dictated routes more than strategy did. Battles were not only fought with weapons, but with fuel, food, and timing. Intelligence reports flowed constantly into command tents and headquarters buildings made of canvas and stone. Some reports were accurate. Others were not. Distinguishing between them became a task as important as moving troops. At this stage of the campaign, the front appeared relatively stable. Both sides anticipated a large confrontation in the coming weeks. Reconnaissance aircraft flew daily. Radio operators listened for patterns in enemy transmissions. Officers studied maps already stained by dust and sweat. On the surface, preparations followed familiar routines. Yet beneath this apparent order, concern grew among Allied planners. Recent engagements had shown that the enemy could anticipate movements with unsettling accuracy. Convoys were intercepted. Forward units encountered resistance sooner than expected. Someone, somewhere, was reacting too quickly. The possibility of compromised information could not be ignored. Within Allied command, a small circle of senior officers began to question existing procedures. Supply routes were predictable. Timetables repeated themselves. The structure that kept the army functioning also made it visible. Any adjustment carried risk. Any change could disrupt not only the enemy, but their own forces. The initial proposal did not involve a new weapon or an attack. It involved absence. Silence. A temporary withdrawal of expected signals. Certain units would move without prior notice. Others would remain in place longer than planned. Logistics schedules would be altered without explanation beyond a limited circle. On paper, the idea seemed minor. In practice, it threatened confusion. Lower-ranking officers were not consulted. Field commanders received orders stripped of context. Questions were discouraged. This was deliberate. The fewer people who knew, the fewer mistakes could be made. Or so the reasoning went. As preparations continued, the desert remained quiet. Soldiers waited. Engines were maintained. Radios crackled with routine messages. No announcement marked the beginning of the change. There was no signal flare. No speech. Only small deviations, introduced carefully, one after another. At the time, no one referred to it as a turning point. It was simply an adjustment. Another entry in a long list of wartime decisions. Its true weight would only become visible later, measured not in words, but in absence. The first effects of the decision appeared subtly. Patrols reported less contact than expected. Enemy artillery fire, once precise, became irregular. Supply convoys reached forward positions with fewer losses. At first, these outcomes were attributed to chance or weather. Desert warfare often produced misleading patterns. Behind the scenes, the new operational approach expanded. Radio discipline tightened. Certain frequencies were abandoned entirely. Dummy traffic increased on others. Movement orders were delivered by courier rather than transmission. These measures slowed coordination, but they also created uncertainty for anyone listening in. German and Italian forces relied heavily on intercepted communications to anticipate Allied actions. When familiar signals disappeared or shifted unpredictably, confidence in their assessments weakened. Commanders hesitated. Units waited for confirmation that never came. Time was lost. For Allied troops on the ground, the change was confusing. Some units advanced earlier than planned. Others remained stationary under harsh conditions, unaware of the larger purpose. Complaints traveled up the chain of command and stopped there. Explanations were withheld. Tension grew among junior officers responsible for executing orders without understanding them. Mistakes occurred. Vehicles arrived at incorrect locations. Supplies were delayed. The margin for error in the desert was small, and the cost of confusion was real. Then came the first significant engagement under the new conditions. Allied units encountered resistance that was weaker and less coordinated than expected. Defensive positions were incomplete. Counterattacks were delayed. The enemy appeared uncertain, reacting rather than anticipating. This shift did not produce an immediate victory. Casualties still mounted. The desert did not become less lethal. But the rhythm of the fighting changed. Initiative slowly moved away from the defenders. Within Allied headquarters, confirmation arrived through intercepted enemy messages. References to missing information. Complaints about unreliable intelligence. Requests for clarification that went unanswered. The decision was working, but only as long as it remained invisible. Maintaining secrecy required constant effort. Even small successes risked drawing attention. Officers were instructed to avoid patterns. No single maneuver could be repeated. Predictability was the enemy now. As weeks passed, the front line advanced unevenly but steadily. What had begun as an experiment became standard procedure, though few knew its origin. The original authors of the decision watched from a distance, aware that acknowledgement could undo everything. The development phase ended not with celebration, but with quiet acceptance. The battlefield had shifted, but no official record explained why. The change blended into the larger narrative of the campaign, indistinguishable from countless other factors. And so the decision continued to shape events, unseen, unspoken, and increasingly difficult to isolate. The climax came during a coordinated Allied push intended to break a critical defensive line in North Africa. Intelligence suggested resistance would be heavy. Past experience supported that assessment. Yet when the operation began, the expected response did not materialize. Enemy units reacted slowly. Artillery fire was sporadic. Command elements appeared disconnected from frontline troops. Communication failures compounded existing shortages of fuel and ammunition. The desert, once an ally to defenders, now magnified their uncertainty. Allied forces advanced under conditions that felt unfamiliar. Resistance existed, but it lacked cohesion. Positions were abandoned prematurely. Counterattacks failed to form in time. The battlefield did not collapse dramatically. It unraveled. Losses still occurred. Vehicles burned. Men fell. But the scale differed from projections. Momentum built where hesitation had once dominated. The altered flow of information had reached its peak effect. For German and Italian commanders, the situation became increasingly opaque. Reports contradicted one another. Expected reinforcements did not arrive where needed. Decisions were delayed while clarity was sought. In war, delay can be fatal. The critical moment passed without a single defining image. No flag was raised. No headquarters was overrun in a symbolic gesture. Instead, the defensive structure simply failed to hold. Retreat followed. Ground was conceded. Only afterward did analysts attempt to trace the cause. Many explanations were offered. Superior numbers, air support, logistics. Each contained some truth. None captured the full picture. The decision made months earlier had done its work by then. It had not destroyed the enemy directly. It had disrupted their ability to understand the battlefield. By the time its impact became undeniable, it could no longer be separated from events. Those who authorized it remained largely anonymous. Their names did not appear in reports. Their rationale was classified, then forgotten. The war moved on. New fronts demanded attention. What remained in North Africa was a landscape altered not only by combat, but by absence. Missing signals. Broken expectations. A silence where certainty once existed. The climax did not end the campaign, but it changed its direction. And like many decisive moments in war, it left no monument. The reports were completed. They were stamped. They were signed. Then they were closed. Some files were copied. Others were not. Several never left the desks where they were written. The officers involved were reassigned, transferred to other fronts, promoted, or quietly retired from view. No ceremony marked the end. No announcement explained what had changed. The battlefield simply moved on. In North Africa, the desert reclaimed its silence. Tracks left by vehicles faded under the wind. Positions once fought over returned to dust and stone. The radios that had gone quiet stayed quiet. For the soldiers, the campaign became memory. Fragments of heat, noise, fear, then distance. For historians, the records offered little clarity. Victories were attributed to momentum, to logistics, to numbers. The absence at the center of it all remained unnamed. The decision did not appear in speeches. It was not taught in detail. It did not fit easily into simplified timelines. What endured was only effect. A front that shifted faster than expected. An enemy that hesitated at the wrong moment. A battle altered without a visible cause. Over time, even that became background. Another campaign among many. Another chapter closed. The people who understood the choice were gone. The context dissolved. The reasoning vanished with them. What remained was quiet. And a change no one could fully trace. Thank you for watching. New historical stories are published regularly.